It is said or thought or believed that the Jesus character condemned Israel to a complete separation from their deity. Their deity disowned them and will inevitably choose another denomination to place his grace upon. It is thought and said, but is this actually the reality? Going into the book of Matthew, Matthew 21:33 to 45. Here another parable. There was a certain householder which planted a vineyard and hedged it round about, digged a winepress in it, built a tower, let it out to husbandmen, and went into a far country. When the time of the fruit, verse 34, drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandmen that they might receive the fruits of it. The husbandman took his servants, 35, and beat one, killed another, stoned another. Again he sent other servants, 36, more than the first. They did likewise unto them. 37, last of all he sent his son, saying, they will reverence my son. 39, they caught him, cast him out of the vineyard, and slew him. Verse 40, what will he do to those husbandmen, the Lord thereof? 41, he will miserably destroy those wicked men, and will let out his vineyard unto other husbandmen, which shall render him the fruits in their seasons. 43, therefore I say unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. 45, when the chief priests and Pharisees had heard his parable, they perceived that he spake of them. And now there is, when we're hearing this, we're hearing, and it is believed or thought that the Jesus character is condemning the denomination itself, the people, however you want to think about that. The Jesus character is here condemning them. The deity of this people is condemning them and choosing another host to place their grace upon. Mark 12:6-9, having yet therefore one son, his well-beloved. Just want to read this from another perspective. He sent him also last unto them, saying, they will reverence my son. Those husbandmen said among themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance shall be yours. They took him, verse 8, and killed him, cast him out of the vineyard. What shall therefore the Lord of that vineyard do? He will come and destroy the husbandmen, and will give the vineyard unto others. Mark 12:12. And they sought to lay hold on him, but feared the people, for they knew that he had spoken the parable against them, and they left him and went their way. Now, the authors writing this are telling us the truth in what they're saying here, and their tense is absolutely present. It is present tense. Spoke against them. Present tense, and we're going to see more. Luke 20:12-16, and again he sent a third, and they wounded him also, cast him out. Then said the Lord of the vineyard, what shall I do? I will send my beloved son. It may be they will reverence him when they see him. When the husbandmen saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours. So they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. What therefore shall the Lord of the vineyard do unto them? He will come and destroy these husbandmen, shall give the vineyard to others. When they heard it, they said, God forbid. Luke 20:19, and the chief priests and the scribes the same hour sought to lay hands on him. They feared the people, for they perceived that he had spoken this parable against them. Now, the one question to ask after reading these things is, who is this parable about? The one giving this, who are they speaking to? Matthew 23:29, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous. Matthew 23:33, you serpents, you generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? Who is this? This is a generational thing that's going on here. This is a generation that this parable is dedicated to. Matthew 23:35-36, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed from the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon what generation? This generation. This generation. It's right there. So we can't really get that wrong, right? Because it's right there. This generation. But if we need some help understanding what this generation means, because the words are very blatant, there are ways to understand that the one speaking these parables and this supposed condemnation against many generations thereafter, it is explained throughout Genesis to Malachi, of which we will take a closer look at. The one giving this parable is only talking to the generation he's talking to. Say that again. The one giving this parable is only talking to the generation that he's talking to. Not talking to your generation, not talking to our parents' generation, to our parents' generation, to our 500 generation from then or backwards. It's very simple. He's talking to the generation that he's then talking to. Why? Deuteronomy 5:9, thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the when? Third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Third and fourth generation, wrath is executed. Third and fourth generation of the host. Exodus 34:7, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children unto the third and fourth generation. Exodus 25, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. This is how the deity from Genesis to Malachi works. This is how they operate. They don't operate from the purpose of a complete separation of themselves from their host. They don't operate from complete annihilation from themselves and from their host. If we know anything about the narrative that the authors have constructed and scripted from Genesis to Malachi, it is that there is a perpetual resurrection of the priesthood that is attached to this deity. He will kill them in order to resurrect them to have a more perfect assembly before him. They will stop being that more perfect assembly before him. He will have to kill them again, resurrect them again, so that they can be a more perfect assembly before them. He will have to restart this process all over again because they will do something to anger their deity that he kills them. And this isn't talking about casual people. This is always centered on the priesthood, always on priests. To resurrect the priesthood, to regenerate the priest and priesthood, to kill them for the purpose of resurrecting and regenerating them all over again, because this is just how the process goes. And this process is always fulfilled in the third and fourth generation. The ones speaking in the Matthews of the world, the Marks of the world, they're speaking to their generation because in the third or the fourth of their generations, destruction will take place. They know this. And especially the authors that are writing these things, they are writing these things from the perspective of it already being fulfilled. So they're not writing prophecy. They are writing historical fiction through a prophetic lens to make it appear what it will appear to be to the reader. But in reality, in the text itself, the individual is speaking to the generation because the generation, by the time the author is writing this, has already been destroyed. They're writing for the third and the fourth generation of this people. There's no divorce. Their deity has not left them. Their deity will never leave them. Their deity has no intention to leave them. Genesis to Malachi is the confirming script for that. So when we're seeing these things of you are not worthy to enter into the kingdom, he will choose another host, more husbandmen, and replace the other husbandmen with those husbandmen. This isn't talking about a new denomination, aka Christian, or any such of a Hellenistic Jewish sect coming thereafter. This is still talking about the same generation. The same generation. They are the ones that are supposed to suffer the wrath because it has come to a point in time where the third and the fourth generation of this people has arrived. This you that the individual is saying this parable, that the author is scripting this parable, that the Jesus character is saying, this you is very specific to the scribes and to the Pharisees of that generation. It is very specific. So this isn't, if we're reading this text, however we're reading it, we have to look at it from the lens in which it is being given, right? The way that the authors are giving this to us, and they're saying everything right there in front of us. To this generation, to the generation of 1st century AD, because it is at this point in time that the 3rd or the 4th generation has come around and a destruction and an annihilation is scheduled for them, because that's how the deity from Genesis to Malachi works. There is no such thing as them being cut off from anything. There's no such thing as them being released from their deity. There is no such thing as anything you want to think about that. That's not what is actually going on in the contextual, cultural, philosophical context of those parables, and especially from Genesis to Malachi. What's actually going on there is a philosophical sequence of thought that resonates with the then Sanhedrin, and that Sanhedrin is not to enter into the kingdom of God. That Sanhedrin, that generation of priests, they will be forbidden from entering into the kingdom of God. This should, move us to think about what actually is the kingdom of God. If this is a condemnation against priests, because this isn't talking about casual people walking around. This isn't talking about folks on the streets. This isn't a street preacher on the corner of some boulevard saying, hey, kingdom of God is here. You won't fall into it. This is an individual, the Jesus character, talking to priesthood and members of priesthood. Members of priesthood will not enter into the kingdom of God, because the 3rd and the 4th generation has come around and they will be slaughtered. What does it actually mean then? We should be thinking. To enter into the kingdom of God that is contextually applicable for what this individual saying this parable is getting at. That's where our minds should be. And when we do engage with this thought, we see that the direction that the authors are taking is something very specific, very unique, and has nothing to do with modern, popular, or traditional theoretical Christian thought. It is in that sense that we then get an overview of the curse that is attached to this, and we see it as the authors intended it. That it is not for any time thereafter or any time before, but it is related to the methodology for how the deity of Israel works in their manner of destruction. 3rd or 4th generation. This priesthood is going to suffer for everything that they have done, the iniquity of their fathers, the children's children. It is all coming to a fold in the 3rd or the 4th generation, which actually did take place in 70 AD.